Welcome to the Buildings and Cooling Pavilion. Today, and hello everyone, welcome to the Buildings and Cooling Pavilion. Today, the session entitled Building Quality, Bankable and Climate Resilient Infrastructure Projects. This is COP30 and on the 19th of November 2025. I'm Melia Leslie. I'm the partnership lead at the Global ABC. Thank you so much for joining the panel today. Today we are going to focus on accelerating the flow of finance towards high quality, climate resilient, and socially inclusive infrastructure projects. Indeed, infrastructure today represents close to 80% of the total global emissions and represents also 80% of the total adaptation costs. This is a UNEP figure from 2021. So this is time for the global meteorau, comme dirait, like they would say the COP presidency. So we would like to explore what it takes to turn promising ideas into bankable investment-ready projects. And how all stakeholders can ensure that the infrastructure truly supports a just transition, particularly in the global south. Here I'm very glad today to have you with me to share your real life experiences from experts. I will kindly invite you to present yourselves. So let me start with Carolina. Welcome.
Thank you for the invitation. Good afternoon, at least here in Brazil. I know that we are broadcasting this panel. I would like to start saying that all great constructions in infrastructure, they are followed by nature-based solutions that complement the work that those infrastructure play to the locality. So to speed up those nature-based solutions, we have to understand what are the enabling conditions for that to take place, and this is what I would like to bring for this discussion.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Carolina. Noel O'Brien is Director of Climate Change at the Asian Development Bank. Would you like to introduce yourself, please?
No, thank you, and good afternoon to the online guests. So my name is Noel O'Brien. I work with the Asian Development Bank. We are a regional development bank. We work in the areas from Turkey right through to the Pacific. We would have an annual portfolio of in the range of 25 billion. I think this year it might be 27 billion. And we invest across 8 sector areas from energy, transport, water, urban, agriculture, and then public sector financial management, the financial systems, health, social protection, education, and digital area. So, and in our region, obviously, a huge amount of the infrastructure that is required is yet to be planned, zoned, and built. So for us, working in this space of resilient infrastructure is a really significant part. Thank you.
Thank you for this. Thank you for joining the panel. If I just connect quickly to the built environment, we at the Global Alliance for Buildings and Construction, we always say that 50% of the buildings are yet to be built by 2050. So still a lot of need, and we need all the infrastructure, the bankable infrastructure along with it. And welcome Duncan Baker-Brown from Baker-Brown. Please introduce yourself.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thanks for the invitation. And I'm actually also here on behalf of the Royal Institute of British Architects, because I'm the joint chair of the Climate Emergency Expert Advisory Group. And for 30 years, I've taught and researched and practiced around different ideas of sustainability in the built environment. And for me, I want to start with one of the findings from the very first COP, which was the Rio summit in '92, where we were all asked to think globally but act locally. That was called Local Agenda 21. And with that in mind, with the built environment, it's interesting that globally, the built environment worth is about 15 to 16 trillion dollars a year. That's the size of the market. The car market, the vehicle market, is about 3 trillion. So it's between 6 and 7 times bigger than the automobile market. We're in a massive market. Every year, last year, humans extracted between 135 and 145 billion tons of materials from the biosphere, whether that's mining and harvesting. Half of that material came to our construction sector to be consumed. We've got to reduce the appetite of the sector, and we've got to learn how to treat waste as a resource. In the UK, where I'm from, this is thinking local, 63% of all the waste that's generated in the UK comes from the construction sector, and that's 120 million tons of stuff. 10 million tons of new materials just never used. So this is where we can think in terms of regenerating the biosphere, taking the pressure off the natural world in the northern hemisphere, in the global north, by reusing what we've already got. And we need a different solution for the global south, but we've still got to be able to regenerate the biosphere.
Thank you. Thank you. You already answered my first question, which was like, what's the major challenge? What's the major challenge that infrastructure
I can find
face?
another one.
Yeah, I will. Well, we added, because just please complement your answer. What's the main barrier to prevent high quality climate resilient infrastructure for reaching bankability?
For me?
Yes, according to you.
Yeah, okay. What we need is the appropriate design codes that are enshrined in law, in legislation. So as soon as you say, like in the UK very recently, because we had a dreadful fire in a tower block, the Grenfell fire disaster, we've now got the Building Safety Act, which has transformed the construction sector. There was a mini sort of recession just while in the industry, while we got our head around how to tackle it. If you put it into legislation, it happens. So at the moment, for example, if you want to retrofit an existing residential building in the UK, you pay 20% value-added tax on that scheme. If you want to knock it down and start again, you don't pay any tax. So it's just there's a tax incentive to demolish at the moment and do new build, therefore requiring new stuff. Flip that on its head or do something else with it, which I know a lot of people are thinking of. You create a different economy based on adaptive reuse, and that's what we need to do in the global north.
Thank you, Duncan. Is it comparable to the global south? So I would like to hear from Carolina first, please. Same question.
Yeah, I would like to bring a different perspective. As I mentioned, here in Brazil, what Green Bridge Facility, my organization, does is the risking territories, and this has a deep connection. Oh, it's okay. Like this, yeah. And this has
closer to the mouth. Yeah. Closer to the mouth.
Okay. This has a strong connection to what I was mentioning before, the green infrastructure and nature-based solutions that need to be put in place to complement the work or to provide the service that the green infrastructure delivers. And for that, to making the place or making the space for nature-based solutions to deliver, then we need to look to those territorial risks. And this has a strong connection to communities. So this is why I mentioned this complementary approach, because now I would like to focus on how to make this connection between infrastructure and what's around infrastructure. So for that, we need to understand what's the territory, what this infrastructure will be located, which are the barriers for those nature-based solutions to be implemented. And in Brazil, we have so many different barriers, like legal land rights, complex regulations, access to capital, not even mentioning, as you mentioned before, the incentives. Just access to capital, to nature-based solutions, something super, super important. So what we do, what is needed in order to have this condition for nature-based solutions to perform, we need to understand the territory, to identify or to design what we call risk management plan, and then to monitor the performance of this plan over time. And with that, we will assure this combination between infrastructure and nature-based solutions that will create or deliver the intended impact that we want to achieve.
Thank you. Thank you. So far, if I understood correctly, at the Global North, we need building codes that are relevant to the building codes that are accurate to the current situation. We need to take into account the local conditions for the scalability of NBS, nature-based solutions. What about your perspective from a bank?
Thank you. And I think we cover both of those. So, I mean, we had two barriers that we want to identify. I think one, there's still a very significant gap in the kind of context-specific, robust information, one on the risks, so understanding the implications, but also what are the costs and benefits of adaptation measures. So, I mean, and there's often this issue that they show long-term benefits of resilient infrastructure significantly outweigh the upfront costs, and detailed analysis tailored to local conditions actually remain limited. And just if you look at the kind of context within which we work, we will have areas where it's just even difficult to get the ground truthing of climate-related data because the met stations don't work, or they haven't been monitored or maintained properly. So, and without this kind of evidence, we just struggle to quantify what are the resilience benefits, and therefore investors often lack the confidence to actually make those and commit to the long-term resilience investment. What we see as a result of that is you may have climate proofing of individual assets, but in some contexts, they may be an island of resilience in a future area, which is actually flooded and which communities can no longer be habitable. So these are areas that we think there's definitely a lot of work, but also it's David, right?
Duncan.
Duncan, sorry, Duncan. I'm at the point that I can hardly even hear my... So...
I don't even know why I'm here now.
Day 9 with at least 6 events per day. But we're fully on board with him on the question of infrastructure, resilient infrastructure standards. So this policy aspects of one is even starting before we get to the building codes, but the zoning decisions, because we have future areas which will be under sea level rise. We have areas which will be future floodplains, and we are still constructing in those areas. And in many cases, we're constructing unsuitable housing for the poorest of the poor members of community. And so that's vital. It's not just on building codes, but it's in things like the electricity sector. We're putting in distribution, power distribution networks, which cannot cope with the extreme heat temperatures. And so we're seeing entire networks go down when they're overloaded in the context of an incredibly high temperature context. I think this is happening across Europe as well as happening in the developing world. So that's an area, and I will share a bit more information on what we're trying to do in that space. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes, it's a very important point to quantify the physical risk of climate change, and when it's possible, according to the local conditions. I would like to follow up with you, Carolina, on the work that the Igarape Institute is doing. at the intersection of climate, governance, and community resilience across Brazil and Latin America. Tell us a bit more about the Green Bridge Facility as a new initiative that focuses on unlocking responsible investment.
Yeah, so what we do,
there is a lot of music just next to us.
Yeah, very
we are
happy discussion.
Day 10 at COP. No, extreme here. We are extreme. Local conditions.
So to say what we do, first we help businesses to understand the risks where they want to operate, and the connection between the project level with the territory. So this is what we call know your territory. Once you know the risks and the opportunities, then you have, as I mentioned before, this risk management plan, and then monitoring risks and the performance of the plan over time. This allowed us to mitigate costs, especially operational, reputational and economic costs, and unlock responsible investment. And this is super valid for construction and infrastructure. With that, we believe that businesses can settle in the place that they have selected to run and to scale up. With that, we build, with this journey, we build legitimacy for the ventures to be in the territory because they establish this good relationship and they avoid creating more vulnerabilities to the place that they have selected, and the opposite, to addressing those vulnerabilities. So this is what we do and the impacts that this has over time. So we leverage the social license to operate. We build what we call community resilience and environmental resilience due to this connection. And when it comes to especially rural zones, this helps to prevent deforestation and to conserve biodiversity. So this is what we do, and the connection and the framework is applicable to nature-based solutions connected to infrastructure.
Thank you. That's really the forefront of. Yeah. I'm sorry for those conditions. Thank you so much, Carolina, to share how you. It made me think about a product of the Global EBC, which is roadmaps, and now you're also developing subnational roadmaps that are co-created with local communities and the regions at the city level, region level, and the national level, and all the private sector has a consultation to ensure that all the new buildings that are being built are in line with city targets, climate targets, and also taking care of the community. So I'm very happy that you are working here in Brazil to ensure that it's adapted to the Amazon and all the type of landscape that you have. I will have a follow-up with you. It's like, how can you make sure that it's just and in taking care of equity consideration? Thank you.
Hello? Yes. Okay, so to address your question, first of all, we have to build this engagement with communities to know their desire, their needs, and to engage. Second, we have to take into consideration their governance structure in order to allow them to have a place, to have a seat in the decision-making process according to their governance system. After that, something that we discuss and we implement is super important in order to have this justice and to engage communities. Benefit sharing. This is another, especially when we are talking about a payment for environmental services, we need to somehow remunerate the communities for the services or for protecting nature and allow nature-based solutions to be there and to perform. And then, and then having over time to allowing them to keep this participation and to benefit from what has been created, the value that has been created. So this is how we address this just transition and the social component.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking care of the communities. And now I will turn I will turn to Noel. What strategy have proven most effective in turning technically strong projects into investment-ready and bankable deals?
Thank you, and I think we've had full sensory overload for the last 9 days. But I think it's the first one when you wanted to have a dancing panel, yes, all at once. So no, seriously, it's a very big part of our work at ADB. We're not just about designing technically strong infrastructure, but also making sure that they're investment ready and bankable. And so it's really essential that we can demonstrate the long-term economic benefits measures using robust climate data and analysis. So I mentioned that earlier. Having that availability of climate data is critical for us. For each of our investments, we require climate risk and adaptation assessments for all of the infrastructure that have potential climate impacts. And so on some cases that may be on asset by asset climate risk assessment, but we also do more of the multi-hazard climate and disaster risk assessments. So understanding the risk for the whole area for the investment. So trying to make sure it is the right location in which to make investments. And in some cases, like in coastal Bangladesh, this may be looking to the future and understanding, are certain towns, is it going to be possible to make them resilient? Or is it just going to be too costly? And at this point in time, it makes more wise decision to choose particular cities or towns to which climate migrants will ultimately migrate. But once we have that understanding of climate, the risk and the adaptation, we also focus on incorporating adaptation costs and benefits into project economic analysis. And so we feel that this gives us the opportunity to generate the real world evidence demonstrating that climate resilient infrastructure is not only necessary but also economically valuable for the future. We have climate resilient projects and can demonstrate that they can enhance bankability by directly integrating some income generation opportunities. We have one particular investment in the Federated States of Micronesia, which is known as Climate Resilient Energy and Water Sector Project. So the installation and climate proofing of renewable energy systems is paired with opportunities for how those are used, such as powering desalination of water supply or enabling cold storage or ice making for agriculture and fisheries. Likewise, we have an investment in Tuvalu, one of the atolls where we have floating solar. So it's building that to ensure that it's resilient to the standards there, but also seeing how it can generate income. So thank you.
Thank you for sharing the strategies and those concrete examples. I don't know if you want to complement with in generalizing what are the opportunities for high-risk projects or...
In terms of, I mean, okay, in the context, I would take some of the higher risk projects, maybe in the context of we still invest in hydropower, and that we can see the risk associated with those, where in some cases we don't have long-term climate-related data. So we're doing a lot of work to model exactly what will the climate concerns be. We're trying to make sure, looking at the kind of extreme storms, but the compound storms, and what will be the opportunities in those cases. What will be the river flow context? What will be the design standards? How do we incorporate overflow? How do we ensure that if we do have situations where the dam has to be open, for example, then how will that be impact downstream communities, and how do you plan for investments in those floodplains? In some other, I'm thinking examples of SIDS right now, but in some contexts where you also associate quite a significant land use planning and urban strategic planning process associated with high investment, so particularly maybe in transport investments. And so how do you ensure that there's resilience context in the future? I may think of other examples.
Thank you so much, Noel, for this thorough, for all the details on how to make projects bankable. Duncan, I would like now to have a look at the performance standards and the design practices. Can you tell me more about how design choices made at the earliest stage can impact drastically the physical risk of climate change at the long term? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for asking that question. What's quite interesting at the moment in the UK is that we've got a couple of different initiatives that are getting us to think a bit more holistically when we're coming up with design solutions. So we've recently, the whole industry's got together and come up with the UK Net Zero Carbon Building Standard. And that's looking at whole life carbon benchmarking. So buildings in different sectors they've got a carbon budget to spend, a limited carbon budget still based on the 1.5 degree Paris targets. And the standard had over 3,500 case studies submitted. It's had about 400 people working on it for 3 years. It's a big thing across it's got every institution and client-facing group as well. So it's a big piece of work, and what we're hoping is that plus our government is going to publish a circular economy plan for England in the spring. So those two bits of guideline, we're hoping will change building regulations. So if building regulations limits embodied carbon, that will automatically get the industry and the supply chain thinking about what good looks like in terms of a product. It will also get the insurance industry thinking what good looks like as a product, where they're used to, say, in commercial buildings, used to them only lasting for 25 years and then being demolished. You might not be able to do that with new codes. So it gets the supply chain having to reconsider how it can step up to those demands. And if you marry that with tax incentives as well, that means you're in a world where you really are having to think about the environmental performance certificates associated with each individual product and its actual harm on the planet. And these things are being taken very seriously in Europe and in the UK at the moment. So given a sort of global north and European focus on this, these things have been taken really seriously. In the UK, we've also got biodiversity net gain. So this is this idea that if you're working on a significant development, infrastructure project or larger housing scheme, you've actually got to prove how you're going to increase the biodiversity on the site by 10%. So if you're going through a site of special scientific interest already, and you want to do that with a road or whatever, that's quite significant. You know, that is co-design that's enshrined in law, and you're co-designing with nature there.
Thank you so much, Duncan. So, just to quickly recap what have been said, if I understood correctly, if I followed with the music, if I followed correctly, we For bankable and resilient infrastructure projects, we need to take into account the community to integrate nature-based solutions. We need to take care standards and tax incentives to make them bankable. We need to collect data at long term on physical risk of climate change. So all those combines. I would like to ask you quickly a follow-up question, Duncan. What do you expect from COP30? What is the one shift, policy, financial or technical, you believe COP30 should help accelerate to close the gap between project operation and investment?
Did you say, what do I expect from COP30?
For example.
Yeah, what I expect from COP30 to decouple from fossil fuels. I mean, that's the thing. So, you know, this was the year when, if I got the headlines right, where the renewable energy exceeded fossil fuels this year. So, in terms of consumption. So, but not in terms of that's just in energy. That's not in terms of manufacture. So, for me, it's really we've got to get real. We've got to stop exploiting the planet, and it's not just the fossil fuel industry that does that. It's the extraction industries that give us the materials that we need to make the things that we take for granted, whether that's a phone, a car, a building, or a city. So if we can decouple from our reliance on the natural world to provide us with new raw materials, that for me would be a big win. But we need a totally different strategy from the global south and the global north. From my point of view, the global north and the UK in particular, because we sort of invented this industrial revolution, oil-based, coal-based industrial revolution, we need to rework on new cities from the material of our old cities. And we've got enough stuff. There's enough stuff above ground, previously manufactured, to rework. And the challenge there, but we're not going to talk about it today, is getting the warranties and certificates and codes and approvals on second-hand stuff.
Yes, one of the messaging of the Global EBC is ensuring that building codes are actually implemented in the Global South, which is far from the case right now. And also, we are also pushing very strongly the LC approach, life cycle assessment, because only the life cycle assessment take care of the local conditions and enables to shift the way that global north cities are built to compare to global south cities. Thank you so much. We are 5 minutes away from the end of the session. I would like to turn to the panelists if you would like to complement, have final words, and if you wish also, we can also welcome questions from the ground.
Thank you. I mean, I just want to pick up on what Duncan's mentioning about the opportunities that exist in strengthening policy standards and regulatory frameworks all across, so that not just, as I said, building codes, but across each of the sectors. And I think the conversation continues to focus on how much we spend on adaptation, but unfortunately, the big ticket items that we need to do, they're not expensive. You know, those policy changes are not going to cost huge amounts. And that's demands on governments in the South to also implement them, which has to come. You know, the money may not come, but there's still a huge amount that can be done. I also, just to put a pitch for ADB, we've just established a specific initiative, which is climate resilient infrastructure standards and practices, to developing country-specific guidance and building institutional capacity. So right across the countries which we work. So I think anything we can do with the architects, the engineers, the universities to drive this is just hugely important for us. And I mean, obviously, within in our transformational resilience initiatives, we fully recognize the importance that nature-based solutions has to play in that. And I think also with that, I put a plug for just the speed at which remote sensing data is being generated in universities. Again, I think it's the transfer of knowledge, it's the partnerships between north-based universities and south-based, so that transfers immediately. And you know, it's not a high expense. It's ensuring that all of those graduates have the knowledge that's needed for the future and the practices. Thank you.
Thank you, Noel.
And a final comment on my side, something that I would like to see coming out of this COP, this connection between climate and nature, and providing your helping by building this connection, highlighting the importance of nature and the connection between nature and the territory, and how we can build a good environment for our constructions, for nature, and for people. So this is my final wish and my final words.
Thank you so much, Carolina. Any questions?
When you talk about the nature-based... yes, hi. My name is Olga Gogoleva. I'm an architect. I come from France with an NGO called La Fraise de la Construction. We're just here with a demo of our game. And so during the workshops, we often like to cite examples of successful projects. And that's why I like to understand, in your head, what would be a resilient nature-based infrastructure project? Does that mean we are planting more trees, making sure that the soil is uncovered so that it can absorb water? There is that perhaps, and what else is out there? How do I explain that during a workshop where people do not understand what nature-based solution is for infrastructure?
To have one, I almost mentioned it earlier. Where I come from on the south coast of England, in Brighton, we've got chalk cliffs that are quite tall, sort of 25 meters tall or something, but they're really soft chalk, and we've got coastal erosion. We've got houses falling into the sea, sort of thing. And you can carry on pouring concrete at the bottom of those cliffs, or you can let nature do its thing. And just before I came to COP, it was decided that there's this place called Cookmere Haven, which is where there used to be, hundreds of years ago, wetlands, salt marshes, and they've agreed to restore it back to salt marshes, because upstream of various towns and cities that are getting more floods, but they won't if they just let nature do what it wants to do, which is it doesn't want to have the water in a canal, it wants salt marshes. So it was agreed just before I came out here that this whole area will be reverted back to salt marshes, and it's a tourist attraction. So it's going to look beautiful, it's going to increase in biodiversity, and it's going to stop the towns that are north of that river flooding. It's really straightforward.
Thank you.
We have a whole range of examples on which you have a combination. So much of coastal India, I mean, it's making a decision that their infrastructure for coastal protection is a combination of grey-green infrastructure. We have the Shandong GCF project in China, which is on that context of city sumps, so that you have a huge amount of absorption that is actually built into the city design. We just have, there's a team right now in Bhutan. We have the city in Punsaling, which is very close to the Indian border, and you have major issues with slopage and landslides in those areas. So, you know, as in the case that Duncan's mentioned, it won't be resolved with just a hard infrastructure context. So that is, you know, something that has to come together. We're doing a lot more work in the glacier context. So, for example, in Nepal, we were the major financier for the Kathmandu water intake initiative. It had been about 10 years in construction and design. The Malamshi water project. It was 2 weeks to opening, $500 million. You have a glacial lake outburst. It's just completely covered. So in those kind of contexts, for the glacial lake context, we're actually bringing in experienced glacial planners, engineers, because you can't actually infrastructure engineer against it. You have to plan and kind of envision what the flows will be. And so a lot of this is really new very innovative work for us. So it's all, I mean, and in those contexts, it's working really closely with government agencies. It's trying to identify where are the champions who believe in this, who help influence the building codes, ensure that this becomes part of the planning process. So it's not as simple as just saying, okay, this will, it's planting some mangroves, this will be a nature-based solution. So I think it cuts right across so much of the investments. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was donc Noel from the Asian Development Banks, Duncan from Baker Brown, and Riba and Carolina from Igarape Institute. I would like also to thank the partners, FIG and the Global Infrastructure Basel Foundation. And I would like also to thank the staff, Amarilis, the photograph, Diego at the sound, Mario and his friend at the live stream. I would like to thank everyone who made this pavilion possible, because I coordinate also this space. Thank you, Olga, also for joining from La Fraise de la Construction. Thank you so much for listening. And I wish you get a good day 10 and 11 tomorrow. Thank you.
And well done for emceeing it through all that noise and stuff. Well done.
Thank you.
Supreme effort. Do we have a group photo?
Are you coming for the NBS session?
Can we have a photo all together?